And welcome back to the NEC convention here at Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And with me today is Scott Dowd from the New England Aquarium.
Hello, thank you for having me on the show.
I've seen you talk at a couple of conventions, Scott, and you seem to have a message of conservation in all your talks. What can you tell us about what you do?
Indeed. I have been very fortunate. I've been a lifelong hobbyist, like just about everybody here at the NEC. And I was very lucky at a young age to get hired as an aquarist, a fish keeper at the New England Aquarium. And I've also been very fortunate in that I had been involved in the very early days of the development of Project Piaba, and I'm now the executive director. So Project Piaba is a conservation research program that's been going on in the Brazilian Amazon for more than 25 years now. And it began with a visit to the region and an observation of the huge volume of live fish that are being exported from the Barcelos region of the Rio Negro for the global aquarium fish trade. And initially, when I saw so many fish being captured and shipped out, I had a knee-jerk reaction. Just seeing the overwhelming amounts of fish, I immediately made the assumption that the fish stocks were being overexploited, and this would be damaging and degrading to the environment. It turned out, though, that I was completely wrong. The fish that represents the majority of the exports from this area are the cardinal tetra. The cardinals represent about 85% of the exports, and cardinal tetras have adapted their natural history, their way they maintain their populations, in regard to some of the seasonal fluctuations that go on in the Amazon, where there is an intense change between the high water and low water seasons. In the high water season, there's quite a few acres that are of rainforest that are completely inundated, and the fish stocks swim amongst the trees where they have an abundance of resources and plenty of fresh, clean water and lots of food. However, that condition is only temporary. When the floods recede, the water levels go down and the river is restricted to the main river channels. And there, it's quite a different situation. There's much less food and more concentrated fish, more concentrated predators. And what happens every year is the cardinal tetra population goes through a collapse. It really dies down to just a small fraction of what it had been at its peak. But enough stock can survive and endure the low water season, that stressful time with such little food and so many predators. And really, one of the amazing things is that some of the fish actually muster the energy to come into spawning condition. They can develop their eggs, and they spawn right at the beginning of the next flood season, and it's very advantageous for them to breed then because their young can benefit by the resources they have access to in the newly flooded forest. So even if us hobbyists weren't buying so many fish that come from that area, and even if there weren't humans that lived in this part of the Rio Negro, the cardinal tetras would go through this annual collapse, and they're adapted to it, so their stocks can replenish. So the fishing takes place after the flood peaks and it starts to recede, and when the fish get concentrated. And that's when the water is shallow enough for the fishers in their dugout canoes with their hand nets to see the schools of cardinal tetras and scoop them up and then sell them on in the town of Barcelos, where they go on to their destination in the global fish trade. So they never collect as many fish as would result in reducing the next year's founding stock. So my first assumption that I made when I saw it in 1991, that it was overburdening the environment, was completely wrong. The other big aspect that I really didn't see when my first thoughts were to stop collecting the fish, they should be farmed instead, is I didn't realize the economic importance that the aquarium fish represented to the people that live in that region. After further study, we realized that the export of the aquarium fish represents at least 60% of the economic income to the region, and it provided livelihoods directly and indirectly to the majority of the people that live there. So what that results in is poverty alleviation. The people that live in the Amazon forest have very limited opportunities for livelihoods, ways they can earn money to provide for the essential needs for their families. And the aquarium fish trade and us hobbyists so far away that are willing to pay money for these fish represent the basis for that livelihood. And this has a huge impact. It removes desperation. It removes hunger. If you are poor and hungry and you have children, you would do anything you could to feed your family. And that means eating monkeys, cutting down trees to sell them for timber. You would do anything. I would do anything, and I can't really blame them. But since they have this foreseeable long-term basis of their economy and their livelihoods with the aquarium trade, this takes away that desperation and gives them hope. And it also gives them a very powerful driver to protect the environment. Even though these fish populations are so resilient, they need pristine Amazon forest ecosystems to be kept intact, and the fishing communities know that. So their focus is on the aquarium fish that they sell, but they protect the whole floodplain and they protect the waterways. So because of our hobby, and because we love these fish and we buy them, it's a revenue stream that goes into this region, and it results in protection for the whole ecosystem. Again, not just the cardinal tetras and the other fish, but the whole floodplain. And this is critical habitat for animals like pink river dolphins, jaguars, monkeys, macaws, anacondas, all of those animals. There are many IUCN red-listed critically endangered species that benefit by the habitat that's protected by this stewardship drive from the fishing communities. Also, beyond that, there is a lot of carbon in the tropical forest that is protected by these fishers. Tons and tons of carbon in these tropical trees that if they were cut and burned, all of that carbon would go into the atmosphere. And again, connecting to climate change, these tropical forests filter out quite a bit of the atmospheric gases that are causing climate change. So our little humble hobby in the beautiful cardinal tetra we've been keeping for generations now has resulted in actually addressing some global problems: poverty alleviation in developing country, preservation of biodiversity, and offsetting climate change. So I am very, very fortunate in that my very early passion with the aquarium hobby has led my life into such interesting work.
Wow, that was great, Scott. Thank you. Now, is there any way our listeners, or indeed hobbyists in general, can support Project Piaba? Like, how do we know that we are helping?
The most direct way that the hobby can help to support Project Piaba and help to support the fishing communities that are protecting the environment is to seek wild-caught cardinal tetras. And a recent partnership has been solidified between Project Piaba and Seagrass Farms. Seagrass Farms down in Florida is, I think, the largest producer, importer, distributor of fish in North America. And if you go onto their website, you can see some new information that's been added to their website about this partnership, about how Seagrass Farms values the environment as much as any conservation biologist, and they see this as an exciting new facet for the hobby, to connect the hobbyists with conservation programs on this scale, because they know too that us fish lovers love and care about the environment, and we want to look for opportunities where we can help the environment. So on Seagrass's website, they have a store locator. So you can go there and put in your zip code, and that will come up with retailers that are in your area. And you can go visit those retailers. They may already have wild-caught cardinal tetras in their store that they've gotten from Seagrass. It may be that they haven't even heard of it yet. So you can let them know that you found their store by the Seagrass Farms store locator, which means they get fish from Seagrass, and you want to encourage them on the next time they place their order to get some cardinal tetras and other aquarium fish from the Rio Negro.
That's great. So remember, go into your local fish store and ask for wild-caught cardinal tetras available through Seagrass Farms, and you'll be helping conservation. Now, apart from that, I believe you do other conservation aspects in your career.
Indeed, through the New England Aquarium, I'm involved a lot in the scientific and academic community. And the largest and oldest environmental organization in the world is a group called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. It's a global group that focuses on all aspects of the environment. There are many specialist groups that focus on different types of animals. This is the group that makes the red list, that helps to understand the threat to various species and can categorize that threat. There's the red list with those that are critically endangered. So I have become involved with the freshwater fishes specialist group, and I've shared this model that we're working on in the Rio Negro. Now, Project Piaba did not initiate this fishery. We did not create it. I cannot take credit for coming up with a conservation scheme and initiating it. Indeed, it was just the hobby itself that put out this need for beautiful fish and coming from places like the Amazon. So these outcomes, again, of providing livelihoods that require preservation of the environment, this is something that is of interest to the IUCN. We want to find successful ways that help protect the environment. So again, with my real fortune in my life's career, I've been asked to set up a group within the IUCN, and what we're doing is we're looking throughout the tropics for similar models of where the aquarium trade has these results, where communities living in areas of biological importance can be connected to the environment via these sustainable aquarium fisheries. This can happen in a variety of areas, tropical forests like it does in the Rio Negro, but there are a lot of other types of habitats, including coral reefs. And in fact, us hobbyists, fish lovers, and those that are advancing the techniques in the hobby are developing some strategies that are very applicable to coral reefs. Coral reef fisheries are some of the most controversial that are going on now in our hobby. But there are ways that we can make some very subtle adjustments to retain the benefits and really take the edge off any of the concerns that have been expressed. We're getting very, very good on handling larval marine fish. New techniques are being developed for culturing foods in easier and easier ways, and there are techniques to trap fish larvae and post-larval settled early life stage fishes. So reef fish don't have the same natural history and the same population dynamics that cardinal tetras do. Reef fish are much longer lived, and there's a much lower recruitment into the adult breeding population compared to how many eggs are laid. And often reef fishes that have been established on coral reefs up until their adulthood, where they graze on bryozoans or sponges or other foods that are not readily available to feed in our aquariums, they sometimes don't adapt easily to life in captivity. But if we're able to trap and capture larvae and early life stage reef fishes and raise them on diets of prepared feeds in captive conditions, they really thrive. And also by capturing fishes at this much earlier life stage, most of those fishes are not going to survive into adulthood. So this is a way that coral reefs can be used in a sustainable way. And like in the Barcelos Cardinal Tetra model, where the reefside residents, those people that live alongside the environmental resource, can be connected to that resource in a way that compels them to want ecological robustness and well-being. So if we can do some capacity building and technology transfer for some reefside communities to help them with these techniques, to trap fish at very early life stages and to be able to handle them only for a short period so they can be flown on to other countries for grow out, they will be connected economically to the well-being of coral reefs. So here again, the hobby can be a very unique and very powerful driver of protecting some of the world's last ecologically pristine regions.
That's wonderful. I guess the next step would be to organize some importers or wholesalers to handle the reef fish that would be produced by this method.
Indeed, it in no way has to result in any loss of market for the traders in the developed countries. If the reefside communities get the fish stabilized just long enough to be shipped out, there are facilities that are very well equipped in Florida and other countries to grow fish out. But again, they will be grown out in captivity, and they will be fed prepared feeds. So when they sell them on to their retail customers, then they go on to the hobbyists, they'll be very well suited for a long life in captivity.
Excellent. Well, I hope our listeners listen to this podcast, and I hope you will hear it. Take note of it. You can support conservation efforts, but with your fish keeping. And with that, thank you very much, Scott Dowd.
Thank you very much.